Okay, we're going to jump into stave 3. And over the course of these next couple staves, we're going to be moving very quickly. We're going to be doing more skipping than we've done in the previous two staves. So look alive, stay with me, be ready to jump. Okay, so stave 3, the second of the three spirits. Awaking in the middle of a prodigiously tough snore, and sitting up in bed to get his thoughts together, Scrooge had no occasion to be told that the bell was again upon the stroke of 1. He felt that he was restored to consciousness in the right nick of time for the especial purpose of holding a conference with the second messenger, dispatched to him through Jacob Marley's intervention. But finding that he turned uncomfortably cold when he began to wonder which of his curtains this new spectre would draw back, he put them every one aside with his own hands, so he's opening the curtains around his bed, and lying down again, established a sharp lookout all round the bed. For he wished to challenge the spirit on the moment of its appearance, and did not wish to be taken by surprise and made nervous. Okay, we're going to jump here. We're going to skip over to the next page, all the way down at the bottom. So Scrooge is Scrooge is looking for this ghost and finally notices a light coming from under the bottom of the door. Okay, and then he goes to, so he's like down the hallway, it would seem, and he goes to another door and he sees a light coming from underneath it. So he's got his hand on the doorknob. Here we go, down at the very bottom of page 52. The moment Scrooge's hand was on the lock, a strange voice called him by his name, and bade him enter. He obeyed. It was his own room. So remember, he left his bedroom, went down the hallway, went to another bedroom or another door, and walked inside his own room again. So very interesting. There was no doubt about that. Top of page 53. But it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove, from every part of which bright gleaming berries glistened. The crisp leaves of holly, mistletoe, and ivy reflected back the light, as if so many little mirrors had been scattered there, and such a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney, as that dull petrification of a of a hearth had never known in Scrooge's time, or Marley's, or for many and many a winter season gone. Heaped up on the floor to form a kind of throne were turkeys, geese, game, poultry, brawn, great joints of meat, sucking pigs, long wreaths of sausages, mince pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red hot chestnuts, cherry cheeked apples, juicy oranges, luscious pears, immense twelfth cakes, and seething bowls of punch that made the chamber dim with their delicious steam. In easy state upon this couch there sat a jolly giant, glorious to see, who bore a glowing torch in shape not unlike Plenty's horn, and held it up high up to shed its light on Scrooge as he came peeping round the door. "Ah, come in," exclaimed the ghost. "Come in, and know me better, man." Scrooge entered timidly, and hung his head before this spirit. He was not the dogged Scrooge he had been, and though the spirit's eyes were clear and kind, he did not like to meet them. Okay, are we starting to see a bit of a change in Scrooge? If he's not able to look this spirit in the eye, what can you infer that Scrooge is probably feeling? Yeah, he's probably feeling some guilt at this point. So we're already beginning to see a little bit of a different Scrooge here. "I am the ghost of Christmas present," said the spirit. "Look upon me." Scrooge reverently did so. It was clothed in one simple green robe or mantle, bordered with white fur. This, top of page 54, this garment hung so loosely on the figure that its capacious breast was bare, as if disdaining to be warded or concealed by any artifice. Its feet, observable beneath the ample folds of the garment, were also bare, and on its head it wore no other covering than a holly wreath, set here and there with shining icicles. Its dark brown curls were long and free as its genial face and its sparkling eye, its open hand, its cheery voice. So this is a jolly soul here. Its unconstrained demeanor, and its joyful air. Girded round its middle was an antique scabbard, but no sword was in it, and the ancient sheath was eaten up with rust. Okay, so he's got this ancient sword sheath around his waist with no sword in it. "You have never seen the like of me before," exclaimed the spirit. "Never," Scrooge made answer to it. "Have never walked forth with the younger members of my family? Meaning, for I am very young, my elder brothers, born in these later years?" pursued the phantom. I don't think I have, said Scrooge. I'm afraid I have not. Have you had many brothers, Spirit? More than 1,800, said the ghost. A tremendous family to provide for, muttered Scrooge. Okay, he's saying he has 1,800 brothers. So what this means is every year we have Christmas spirit, right? So every year it's like there's a new Christmas and a new Christmas spirit. Those are his brothers. The ghost of Christmas present rose. Spirit, said Scrooge submissively, conduct me where you will. I went forth last night on compulsion, meaning I was forced to go, and I learned a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it. Touch my robe. Scrooge did as he was told and held it fast. Top of page 55. Holly, mistletoe, red berries, ivy, turkeys, geese, game, poultry, brawn, meats, pigs, sausages, oysters, pies, puddings, fruit, and punch all vanished instantly. So did the room, the fire, the ruddy glow, the hour of night, and they stood in the city streets on Christmas morning, where, for the weather was severe, the people made a rough but brisk and not unpleasant kind of music in scraping the snow from the pavement in front of their dwellings, and from the tops of their houses, whence it was mad delight to the boys to see it come plumping down into the road below, and splitting into artificial little snowflakes. Okay, we're going to do quite a bit of skipping right here. Now, before we do this, he's the ghost of Christmas present. Present means when, means now. So it's going to, this description over the next couple pages is going to be describing what London looks like on Christmas Day, right? They're passing, storefronts and churches and homes, and everybody's getting ready for Christmas. And all the while, as they're traveling through London, seeing all these scenes of people preparing for Christmas, the ghost of Christmas past has his torch, and he's dropping incense from his torch onto all of these people, right? He's like dropping this incense in kind of a merry way as he goes along. And that incense is supposed to represent like Christmas blessings. Okay, so that's what he's doing as he goes along. And Scrooge notices that he especially drops incense on the people who are needy. So Scrooge notices that. Okay, we're actually going to skip all the way, keep on going to page 59. 59 we're going to skip, and we're even going to skip most of that page all the way down to the bottom, and perhaps on page 59. Here we go. And perhaps it was the pleasure the good spirit had in showing off this power of his, or else it was his own, top of page 60, his own kind, generous, hearty nature, and his sympathy with all poor men that led him straight to Scrooge's clerks. So whose house are they at now? The home of Bob Cratchit. For there he went, and took Scrooge with him, holding to his robe, and on the threshold of the door the spirit smiled, and stopped to bless Bob Cratchit's dwelling with the sprinkling of his torch. Think of that. Bob had but 15 bob a week himself. So Bob was also a nickname for money, for some little change. Shillings is another name for shillings. So he only makes 15 shillings a week. Okay. He pocketed on Saturdays, but 15 copies of his Christian name, so 15 shillings. And yet the ghost of Christmas present blessed his 4-roomed house. Then up rose Mrs. Cratchit, Cratchit's wife, dressed out but poorly in a twice-turned gown. Okay, we're going to skip these paragraphs too. They describe the home, and they're describing the people in the home, Bob Cratchit's wife and his children, and they're all just very poorly dressed. It's very clear that they do not have enough money. They don't have nice clothing, and they're wearing patches and all of these things, right? They're even dressed up in their Sunday best, and they still look raggedy, and Scrooge notices these things. We're going to skip to page 61, and we're going to go almost a little past halfway down where it says, so Martha hid herself. So Bob Cratchit hasn't come home from work yet, and Martha, his daughter, is hiding. She's going to play a little hide and seek game with him. And she's told the others that that's what she's going to do. So Martha hid herself, and in came little Bob. And I don't know why they call him little Bob. They're talking about Bob Cratchit. Okay. So I guess in a previous stave, they said that he was very thin. So he's referring to him as little Bob. The father, with at least 3 feet of comforter, exclusive of the fringe, hanging down before him, and his threadbare clothes darned up and brushed to look seasonable. So he's wearing his very best, and yet they're all mended and things. They're very poor clothing. And Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Alas for Tiny Tim, he bore a little crutch, and had his limbs supported by an iron frame. Okay, so what's going on with his son, Tiny Tim? What's Bob Cratchit's son like? Yes, he suffers from something that requires that he use a crutch to walk, right? Some sort of illness. So there are many things it could be, but we know that he is a cripple. Why, where's our Martha? Cried Bob Cratchit, looking round. Not coming, said Mrs. Cratchit. Ah, she's playing along with Martha. Not coming, said Bob, with a sudden declension in his high spirits, for he had been Tim's blood horse all, top of page 62, he's been carrying Tim around, um, all the way from church, and had come home rampant. Not coming upon Christmas Day. Okay, and I said that Bob was coming home from work. I misspoke. They're coming home from church. That's Christmas Day. Okay. Martha didn't like to see him disappointed, if it were only in joke, so she came out prematurely from behind the closet door and ran into his arms, while the two young Cratchits hustled Tiny Tim and bore him off into the wash house that he might hear the pudding singing in the copper. Okay, we'll get back to this pudding here in just a minute. And how did little Tim behave? Asked Mrs. Cratchit, when she had rallied Bob on his credulity, and Bob had hugged his daughter to his heart's content. As good as gold, said Bob, and better. Somehow he gets thoughtful, sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped the people saw him in the church, because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. Okay, who is he referring to? Remember, they've just come from church. Bob's voice was tremulous when he told them this, and trembled more when he said that Tiny Tim was growing strong and hardy. Okay, so obviously we can infer from this that Bob Cratchit has very strong feelings for his little son. His little son is very sickly. He's a cripple, but we can tell just from this previous paragraph that Tiny Tim has a good heart. He's a good little boy. His active little crutch was heard upon the floor, and back came Tiny Tim before another word was spoken. Escorted by his brother and sister to his stool before the fire, and while Bob, turning up his cuffs, as if, poor fellow, they were capable of being made more shabby, compounded some hot mixture in a jug with gin and lemons, and stirred it round and put it on the hob to simmer. So he's making a drink here, a Christmas drink. Master Peter and the two ubiquitous young Cratchits went to fetch the goose, with which they soon returned in high procession. Okay, we're going to skip a little bit on the top of this next page, page 63. They're describing them preparing the meal. And all the while, Scrooge is noticing how small the meal is. It's a large family, and there's very little that they're cooking. But I want you to notice how grateful this family is for this. To them, it is a huge goose, but Scrooge notes that it's tiny, not enough to feed them. There never was such a goose. Bob said he didn't believe there ever was such a goose cooked. Its tenderness and flavor, size and cheapness were the themes of universal admiration. Eked out by the applesauce and mashed potatoes, it was a sufficient dinner for the whole family. Indeed, as Mrs. Cratchit said with great delight, surveying one small atom of a bone upon the dish, they hadn't ate it all at last. Yet everyone had had enough, and the youngest Cratchits in particular. Okay, so it was barely enough to feed them. Okay, top of page 64. We're going to skip this first part of the top of page 64. In fact, we're going to skip all the way down to the very last line on page 64, at last. Here we go. At last, the dinner was all done. The cloth was cleared. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention, you're going to see this when we watch the movie. They bring out a Christmas pudding. And pudding in the UK, in the United Kingdom, in England, is very different than pudding here. Pudding here is like a gelatinous dessert. It's kind of like Jell-O, right? In the UK, it's more like almost like a cake, a rounded cake that they steam. And then what they'll often do is they'll pour brandy on it, and then they'll light it on fire. So you'll see in the movie, and it's like the crown of the meal. That's what they look forward to as their dessert of Christmas pudding. But you'll see in the movie, Mrs. Cratchit will come out with this rather small pudding, but it's lit a fire, and that's in celebration of Christmas. Okay, so last line here on page 64. At last the dinner was all done. The cloth was cleared. Oh, sorry, we're going to skip to here. 65, we're going to go midway down. And they're talking about how they finished the meal and they're going to have that hot drink that they had prepared on the stove. And then Bob Cratchit's going to offer a toast here. So we're going to start right here in the middle where it says, "A Merry Christmas, Find that spot. Here we go. A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us, which all the family re-echoed. God bless us, every one, said Tiny Tim, the last of all. He sat very close to his father's side upon his little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his, as if he loved the child and wished to keep him by his side, and dreaded that he might be taken from him. Spirit, said Scrooge, with an interest he had never felt before, tell me if Tiny Tim will live. I see a vacant seat, replied the ghost. What does vacant mean? Empty. I see a vacant seat, replied the ghost, in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. No, no, said Scrooge. Oh, no, kind spirit. Say he will be spared. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, top page 66. None other of my race, returned the ghost, will find him here. What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Okay, wow, where have we heard those words before? Does that sound familiar? Who was the last person who said, let them die and decrease the surplus population? Yep, Scrooge, of course. So this ghost starts to see that Scrooge has a little bit of humanity. He's caring about this poor little boy who's likely to die, and the ghost seizes on that opportunity to use Scrooge's words against him. Oh, wow. So listen to this. Scrooge hung his head to hear his own words quoted by the spirit and was overcome with penitence. He is feeling all kinds of regret and sorrow over how he has behaved, and grief. Man, said the ghost, if man you be in heart. Okay, he's going to give him a tongue lashing here. He's going to chew out Scrooge. If man you be. He's really letting him have it. If man you be in heart, not adamant, forbear that wicked cant until you have discovered what the surplus is and where it is. Will you decide what men shall live, what men shall die? It may be that in the sight of heaven, you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child. Oh God, to hear the insect on the leaf pronouncing on the too much life among his hungry brothers in the dust. So he's basically saying, who are you to think that it is better that you live and that others like this poor man's child die? He's saying they might be worth, millions of them might be worth more than you. He definitely let him have it. Scrooge bent before the ghost's rebuke, and trembling cast his eyes upon the ground, but he raised them speedily on hearing his own name. Mr. Scrooge, said Bob. I'll give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. Okay, so remember, while the spirit and Ebenezer Scrooge are having this conversation, the family has been drinking and toasting to Christmas, right? And now Bob Cratchit is toasting to Mr. Scrooge. The founder of the feast, indeed, cried Mrs. Cratchit, reddening. Oh, how does she feel about that? She's turning red. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and I hoped he'd have a good appetite for it. My dear, said Bob, the children, Christmas Day. It should be Christmas Day, I am sure, said she, on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you do, poor fellow. My dear, was Bob's mild answer, Christmas Day. Top of page 67. I'll drink his health for your sake and the day's, said Mrs. Cratchit, not for his. Long life to him, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt. So is she being sarcastic there? I sense some sarcasm. The children drank the toast after her. It was the first of their proceedings which had no heartiness in it. Okay, so the children know not to like Ebenezer Scrooge. Okay, we're going to do some skipping here, okay? And during this part, they're talking about how one of Mr. Cratchit's sons, Peter, one of his young sons, has to go out and get a job. The family is so desperate for money that they've secured a position for Peter. So we're going to skip actually to the next page, page 68, and we're going to skip down to that second paragraph. There was nothing, okay? There was nothing of high mark in this. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty, and Peter might have known, and very likely did, the inside of a pawnbroker's. So Peter has had to sell a lot of their belongings so that they can make ends meet. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. So they're good people. And when they faded and looked happier yet in the bright sprinklings of the Spirit's torch at parting, Scrooge had his eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim, until the last. Okay, has Tiny Tim had a real effect on Scrooge? You betcha. He is really concerned about this little boy. Okay, we're going to skip actually this page, the rest of this page. We're going to skip the next page. We're going to skip the next page. So the ghost takes him on a journey all over England. He's showing him like sailors at sea and all kinds of other scenery of people preparing for Christmas. And Scrooge notices that even when people are poor and working hard, they stop what they're doing and they give presents to the day, and they are pleased to celebrate Christmas. We're going to go to 71, page 71, and we're going to skip the first half. A little more than halfway down, there's a paragraph that starts with, "It was a great surprise." That's where we're going to pick it up. Here we go. "It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while listening to the moaning of the wind and thinking what a solemn thing it was to move on through the lonely darkness over an unknown abyss, whose depths were secrets as profound as death. It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while thus engaged, to hear a hearty laugh. It was a much greater surprise to Scrooge to recognize it as his own nephew's, and to find himself in a bright, dry, gleaming room, with the Spirit standing smiling by his side, and looking at that same nephew with approving affability." Okay, where are they now? Yep, his nephew Fred's home is where the Spirit has brought him. Okay, top of page 72. "Ha ha ha!" laughed Scrooge's nephew. "Ha ha ha ha! If you should happen by any unlikely chance to know a man more blessed in a laugh than Scrooge's nephew, all I can say is, I should like to know him too. Introduce him to me, and I'll cultivate his acquaintance." Okay, so here is Charles Dickens, the author, using he's speaking in second person, right? He's speaking directly to you. If you know somebody who laughs like Fred, I want to know him too. "It is a fair, even-handed, noble adjustment of things that while there is infection and disease and sorrow, there is nothing in the world so irresistibly contagious as laughter and good humor. When Scrooge's nephew laughed in this way, holding his sides, rolling his head, and twisting his face into the most extravagant contortions, Scrooge's niece, by marriage," so this is Fred's wife, "laughed as heartily as he, and their assembled friends, being not a bit behindhand, roared out lustily." Okay, so they're at Fred's house. They've got all these friends there. What's going on, guys? When is this? Yes, this is Christmas Day. This is the very dinner that Fred had invited Uncle Scrooge to attend, and Scrooge had turned him down. And now Fred doesn't know it, but Scrooge is there now at this dinner. "Ha ha 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 ha! He said that Christmas was a humbug, as I live!" cried Scrooge's nephew. "He believed it too." Okay, so Fred is talking about somebody. Who is he telling his friends about? About his Uncle Scrooge. "More shame for him, Fred," said Scrooge's niece indignantly. "Bless those women. They never do anything by halves. They are always in earnest." She was very pretty, exceedingly pretty, with a dimpled, surprised-looking, capital face, a ripe little mouth that seemed made to be kissed, as no doubt it was. All kinds of good little dots about her chin that melted into one another when she laughed, and the sunniest pair of eyes you ever saw in any little creature's head. Altogether she was what you would have called provoking, you know, but satisfactory too. Oh, perfectly satisfactory. So this is Fred's wife. She's a beauty. "He's a comical old fellow," said Scrooge's nephew. Okay, still talking about Scrooge, top of page 73. "That's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offences carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him." "I'm sure he is very rich, Fred," hinted Scrooge's niece. "At least you always tell me so." "What of that, my dear?" said Scrooge's nephew. "His wealth is of no use to him. He don't do any good with it. He don't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking that he is ever going to benefit us with it." "I have no patience with him," observed Scrooge's niece. Scrooge's niece's sisters and all the other ladies expressed the same opinion. "Oh, I have," said Scrooge's nephew. "I am sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself, always. Here he takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? He don't lose much of a dinner." "Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner," interrupted Scrooge's niece. Okay, we're going to skip a little bit here. And Scrooge is watching all of these proceedings. He's seeing all of this happen and hearing him discussed, and he's quite surprised that all of these people don't have a high regard for him. Okay, we're going to go, it's almost halfway down on page 74. I was going to say, here we go. "I was going to say," said Scrooge's nephew, "that the consequence of his taking a dislike to us and not making merry with us is, as I think, that he loses some pleasant moments, which could do him no harm. I am sure he loses pleasanter companions than he can find in his own thoughts, either in his mouldy old office or his dusty chambers. I mean to give him the same chance every year." He's saying, every year I'm going to invite him to Christmas dinner, "whether he likes it or not, for I pity him. He may rail at Christmas till he dies, but he can't help thinking better of it. I defy him. If he finds me going there in good temper year after year and saying, 'Uncle Scrooge, how are you?' if it only puts him in the vein to leave his poor clerk £50, that's something, and I think I shook him yesterday." It's interesting. He thinks he made an impression on him yesterday. All right, and then they all laughed at that idea. Okay, so it goes on to describe the party. They're dining, and then there's music and dancing, all kinds of things. We're going to skip a little bit. We're going to skip the next page, page 75, and the next page, page 76, and they're playing games, and the spirit notices that Scrooge is just getting into this. He is loving hearing them play games. Scrooge almost doesn't even realize that they can't see him. He's like jumping in and like answering things to the games and stuff and just having a grand old time. And the spirit is just watching him in amusement. Okay, so we're going to be at top of page 77, second paragraph down, the ghost. Here we go. "The ghost was greatly pleased to find him in this mood, and looked upon him with such favor that he begged like a little boy to be allowed to stay until the guests departed. But this, the spirit said, could not be done." So Scrooge wants to stay at this party. "Here's a new game," said Scrooge. "1 half-hour, spirit, only one." It was a game called Yes and No, where Scrooge's nephew had to think of something, and the rest must find out what, he only answering to their questions yes or no, as the case was. Okay, so this is kind of like if you've ever played 20 questions. It's kind of like that. That's the game they're playing. The brisk fire of questioning to which he was exposed elicited from him that he was thinking of an animal, a live animal, rather a disagreeable animal, a savage animal, an animal that growled and grunted sometimes. So these are the hints that Fred is giving to his guests, and they're all guessing these things. A savage animal growled and grunted sometimes, and talked sometimes, and lived in London, and walked about the streets, and wasn't made a show of, and wasn't led by anybody, and didn't live in a menagerie, and was never killed in a market, and was not a horse, or an ass, or a cow, or a bull, or a tiger, or a dog, or a pig, or a cat, or a bear. At every fresh question that was put to him, this nephew burst into a fresh roar of laughter, and was so inexpressibly tickled that he was obliged to get up off the sofa and stamp. At last the plump sister, falling into a similar state, cried out, "I have found it out! I know what it is, Fred! I know what it is!" Okay, so he's given all these hints about a savage animal. "What is it?" cried Fred. "It's your Uncle Scrooge!" Which it certainly was. Admiration was the universal sentiment, though some objected that the reply to "Is it a bear?" ought to have been yes. Okay, so that's a good joke right there. Okay, so Scrooge is seeing all this, that they are basically, he's the butt of jokes here. They're making fun of him. Inasmuch as answer in the negative was sufficient to have diverted their thoughts from Mr. Scrooge, supposing they had ever had any tendency that way. "He has given us plenty of merriment, I am sure," said Fred, "and it would be ungrateful not to drink his health. Here is a glass of mulled wine ready to our hand at the moment, and I say, Uncle Scrooge." "Well, Uncle Scrooge," they cried, so he's toasting his Uncle Scrooge too. "A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man, whatever he is," said Scrooge's nephew. "He wouldn't take it from me, but may he have it, nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge." Okay, we're going to do some more skipping here, just a little though. Skip the rest of that page, skip the first paragraph and a bit of the next paragraph on the top of page 79. We're going to start midway through where it starts. It starts right in the middle. It was strange too. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down in that second paragraph, and then right in the middle. It was strange. It was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered in his outward form, okay, so I need to explain. The spirit has now brought Scrooge out of the party, and they're in the street. Scrooge is expecting that they're going to move on to the next scene, okay? And Scrooge has not changed. He's remained unaltered in his outward form, but the ghost grew older, clearly older. Scrooge had observed this change, but never spoke of it until they left a children's 12th night party, when, looking at the spirit as they stood together in an open place, he noticed that its hair was gray. "Are spirits' lives so short?" asked Scrooge. "My life upon this globe is very brief," replied the ghost. "It ends tonight." "Tonight!" cried Scrooge. "Tonight at midnight. Hark, the time is drawing near." The chimes were ringing the 11:15 at that moment. "Forgive me if I am not justified in what I ask," said Scrooge, looking intently at the spirit's robe. "But I see something strange, and not belonging to yourself, protruding from your skirts. Is it a foot or a claw?" "It might be a claw, for the flesh there is upon it," was the spirit's sorrowful reply. "Look here." Okay, so Scrooge looks down at the bottom of the spirit's robes and sees like a foot or claw sticking out. From the foldings of its robe, it brought 2 children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They knelt down at its feet and clung upon the outside of its garment. Top of page 80. "Oh, man, look here. Look down here," exclaimed the ghost. They were a boy and a girl, yellow, meager, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate too in their humility. Where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints, a stale and shriveled hand like that of age had pinched and twisted them and pulled them into shreds. Where angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurked and glared out menacing. No change, no degradation, no perversion of humanity in any grade through all the mysteries of wonderful creation has monsters half so horrible and dread. Okay, this description of these 2 children, right? They're not delightful to look at. They look hideous and scary and not well fed. Scrooge started back, appalled, having them shown to him in this way. He tried to say they were fine children, but the words choked themselves rather than be parties to a lie of such enormous magnitude. "Spirit, are they yours?" Scrooge could say no more. "They are man's," said the spirit, looking down upon them, "and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance. This girl is want. Beware them both in all their degree. But most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom. Unless the writing be erased, deny it," cried the spirit, stretching out its hand towards the city. "Slander those who tell it ye. Admit it for your factious purposes and make it worse, and bide the end." "Have they no refuge or resource?" cried Scrooge. He's saying, isn't there any help for these children? "Are there no prisons?" said the spirit, turning on him for the last time with his own words. Who was the last person who said that? Scrooge, of course. "Are there no workhouses?" The bell struck 12. Top of page 81. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost and saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. Here comes the third spirit. All right. And then think about this, what the ghost has told him: beware of ignorance and want. Okay. And he does Scrooge need to beware of those things? You bet, right? He needs to be aware of the want of others. Okay. Is Scrooge guilty of some of those things? Okay, we're actually going to jump right to stave 4. Let's jump right in. This phantom is coming. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment from which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of its visible save one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. Okay, so it's got this black garment around it, and the only thing Scrooge can see protruding from the garment is a hand. That's it. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. "I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come," said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand. "You are about to show me the shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us?" Scrooge pursued. "Is that so, spirit?" The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its, top of page 84, had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. So it's basically like he's softly nodding that yes, he's the ghost of Christmas future, or Christmas yet to be. Although well used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. The spirit paused a moment, as observing his condition and giving him time to recover. But Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him, while he, though he stretched his own to the utmost, could see nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. "Ghost of the future!" he exclaimed, "I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?" It gave him no reply. Okay, so Scrooge is very scared of this spirit. Are we seeing some more change in Scrooge? Remember with that first spirit, he was basically like, go away, get out of here. And he was rude to Jacob Marley. And now he's saying, I will go. I will go and I'll be thankful for whatever you show me. Okay, we're going to skip. They're going to, the author describes in these next few pages that they're on the streets of London, and the spirit takes him to hear the conversation of many different people who are all discussing that somebody has died. And Scrooge can't figure out who it is. He can tell it's a man, and he can tell that nobody is upset about this. They're just discussing that this man has died, and nobody's really heartbroken over it. They're just saying it matter-of-factly, and they're asking, what did he do with his money? And, just questions like that. And it's quite disturbing to Scrooge. He's bothered that some person has died, and nobody seems to care. In fact, it almost is amusing to them, okay? Make an inference. Who are they discussing? All right, we're going to skip over to the very bottom of page 86. I'm just going to read, or I'm just going to mention this too, that Scrooge, at the bottom of page 86, he's inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach importance to these conversations. He's kind of wondering, like, why is the spirit showing me all these people talking about this dead person? He doesn't understand it. He's wondering why the spirit's showing him that. Okay, we're going to skip page 86, page 87. We are going to skip all the way to, on page 88, I'll just describe what's happening here. The spirit takes Scrooge to another part of town in up alleys and archways where now they're in a rough part of town. It's got straggling streets, and they reeked with crime and with filth and misery. And during these next couple pages, this Scrooge sees that there's a group of people there that are obviously thieves. And what they're doing on pages 88 and 89, we're going to keep going, page 90, 91, is they're describing how they have broken into the house of a dead person and they stole everything. They stole candlesticks and silver, and they even stole the curtains off the dead man's bed. And then toward the very end, this is on page 92, we've learned that one of the women even stole the shirt off the dead person's back. And these thieves are laughing about this, and they're excited to sell what they have. They feel like the things they stole were worth a lot, and they're very excited to sell it. And Scrooge, once again, is very disturbed by this. He's going, who did they do this to? And they're just so callously laughing about it, right? Okay, so we're going to go to the top of page 93, and we're going to skip that first little paragraph. We're going to go to the second paragraph. He recoiled in terror, okay? So he is just asking the spirit, who is this? Who is this unhappy man who has died and who they've taken advantage of? He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, there lay a something covered up, which, though it was dumb, meaning silent, remember there are two definitions to dumb, means silent as well, announced itself in awful language. The room was very dark, too dark to be observed with any accuracy, though Scrooge glanced round it in obedience to a secret impulse, anxious to know what kind of room it was. A pale light, rising in the outer air, fell straight upon the bed, and on it, plundered and bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this man. Scrooge glanced towards the phantom. Its steady hand was pointed to the head. The cover was so carelessly adjusted that the slightest raising of it, the motion of a finger upon Scrooge's part, would have disclosed the face. He thought of it, felt how easy it would be to do, and longed to do it, but had no more power to withdraw the veil than to dismiss the spectre at his side. So he's at this bed of this dead man, and the dead man's body is covered with a sheet, and he could easily lift that sheet and discover who that man was. He doesn't dare do it. Okay, skip over to page 94. We're going to go a little more than halfway down with this paragraph that begins with spirit. This is Scrooge speaking. Spirit, right here, page 94. Spirit, he said, this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. Trust me. Let us go. Still the ghost pointed with an unmoved finger to the head. Okay, the spirit wants him to discover who that man is. I understand you, Scrooge returned, and I would do it if I could. But I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power. Again it seemed to look upon him. If there is any person in the town who feels emotion caused by this man's death, said Scrooge, quite agonized, show that person to me, Spirit. I beseech you. He's saying, isn't there anybody who cares that this man is dead? The phantom spread its dark robes before him for a moment, like a wing, and withdrawing, it revealed a room by daylight where a mother and her children were. Okay, so he's saying, show me somebody who cares about this man dying. And he's taken to the home of people who, when the wife learns from the husband that a man in town has died, they at first are very worried because they owe this man a lot of money, right? So they care that he's died. But then they discover that because he's died, they no longer owe the debt. So then they become happy about it. They are no longer bankrupt. Okay, so Scrooge was asked to see somebody who's happy or moved emotionally by the death, but it's a different emotion than he wanted to see. Okay, we're going to skip over to page 96, and we're going to skip the first half. We're going to go halfway down where it says, let me see. Okay, halfway down page 96. Let me see some tenderness connected with a death, said Scrooge, or that dark chamber spirit, which we left just now, will be forever present to me. Okay, we're going to pause right there, and we're going to pick it up in the next video.